Support comes from the Gates Foundation Discovery Center, featuring new interactive exhibitions spotlighting innovations with global impact. Open Wednesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. with guided tours at 2 p.m. All are welcome. More at discovergates.org.
These days, there's so much news, it can be hard to keep up with what it all means for you, your family, and your community. The Consider This podcast from NPR features our award-winning journalism. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a news story and provide the context and analysis that helps you make sense of the news. We get behind the headlines. We get to the truth. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.
For nearly a century, Washington's timber industry produced everything from paper to 2x4s to the massive wood beams that hold up the Tacoma Dome.
Well, you couldn't have this house or life as we know it without forest products.
That's right.
Lumber mills were the backbone of logging towns throughout the Northwest.
We want to live our lives and raise our families, and we want to do it here, and we all have a choice, and this is where we choose to be.
But the industry's been on a long decline since the 90s.
A longtime lumber mill in Washington County is closing its doors. For decades, it was a staple in the small community of Banks.
The city of Philomath just received some devastating news. A major sawmill company announced it's shutting down completely there, meaning dozens of lost jobs.
Now, President Trump wants to reduce foreign competition and increase U.S. logging to bring back those jobs. I'm Joshua McNichols.
And I'm Monica Nicholsberg. This is Booming, a podcast about the economic forces shaping our lives here in the Pacific Northwest.
Could Trump's strategy revive the timber industry in the Northwest? We went to a sawmill in the foothills of Mount Rainier to find out.
So that's it. They're going to make furniture out of our tree. You know, you analyzed the situation perfectly. There goes our tree now!
So Joshua, for the past few months, I've spent a lot of time tracking layoffs in the tech industry, but I know it's not the only place we're losing jobs. So what's going on with the lumber mills in Washington?
Well, the timber industry is not immune to these layoffs. In June, there was a plywood mill on the Columbia River that closed and laid off all its workers. And we just learned about another one that's laying off 112 people. Those layoffs are part of a bigger trend that's been happening for decades. Today, the state has about 100,000 timber-related jobs, including mills. That means we've lost about a quarter of our timber jobs in the last 30 years. And that loss has been devastating to rural communities built around sawmills.
So you went to one of these lumber mill towns to see what's going on, right? I know personally, I've bought wood from Home Depot, but I don't really know how it goes from being a tree in the forest to the 2x4s that you can buy. So what's it like inside one of these mills?
Well, I'll set the scene for you. I'm here in the car with our producer, Alec Cowan, and we are driving to the Hampton Lumber Mill in Morton, Washington. Morton is this sleepy little town, population just over 1,000. There's a big wooden statue of a lumberjack as you drive in. But back in the 1950s, it was known as the railroad tie capital of the world.
That's a big calling card for such a tiny town.
We chose Morton because there's still a mill there that has survived these waves of closures over the years. We drove in on a beautiful, cloudy day. Mount Rainier was just sort of peeking out once in a while in the distance. And all around us, as we drove in, there's these hills just covered with trees. Now, we're definitely in a lumber town. There's murals of lumberjacks and American flags. And then we see the mill itself, and there's steam rising off it from the kilns. The first thing that hits you is the strong, sappy smell of freshly cut wood. The mill itself is like a giant machine. It looks highly automated, with just a few dozen people running it. Today, this mill produces enough lumber each day to frame 70 houses.
Those are the actual saw blades right there.
You see logs in all stages of being cut apart. They're flying around on conveyor belts. Some of these belts carry the wood like a log ride at the fair. Once they're cut down to studs, it becomes more like a really fast merry-go-round. It feels a little like a carnival.
A carnival where it's easy to get your fingers cut off.
Our tour guide warned us about that.
Obviously, keep your hands inside the rides at all times.
The saws are incredible. There's these circular saws that slice through 2 to 3 foot diameter logs in seconds. And there are spiral grinders that strip bark, leaving barber pole stripes on the logs. And then there's long ribbon-shaped saws that spin in a continuous loop. After the logs are sawn to size, they're stacked, dried in a kiln, and sent out to lumber yards and Home Depots.
That's quite a picture. I feel like I can smell it. It reminds me of when my husband and I installed this tongue and groove ceiling in our camper van, and our road trips just like smelled so good. It was like we were driving through the forest and you could smell the forest.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me why the timber industry has declined so much here.
The mill manager, a guy named Aaron Poquette, highlighted a few things when I asked him that question. First, he said it's become more difficult to harvest timber from public lands. The timber wars of the 1980s and 90s and efforts to protect wildlife, like the spotted owl, put restrictions on how much forest land can be cut down.
The harvest volumes that come off the national forest that's right in our backyard are nowhere near what they were in the 80s and early 90s, not even close. We have this huge timber base right in our backyard. That timber base is gone. The timber's still there, but we're just not taking the harvest.
There have been other changes too. Higher labor costs, industry consolidation, and changes in who owns private forest land.
It's been hard, but we're still going to keep fighting through it.
And finally, lumber from Canada is so much cheaper because of its vast timberlands and the government's involvement in setting prices. We currently import about a third of our wood from Canada.
Okay, so I know that Trump has laid out a strategy aimed at bringing the industry back, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But before we do, what would we gain from bringing these jobs back?
Well, they're good jobs in rural communities. When I was on this tour, I ran into Dennis Barnes. He's a mill worker who's actually retiring this week. He started as an entry-level worker, probably sweeping up sawdust or something. Now he's in charge of quality control. He monitors a huge computer system that keeps track of every single board as it moves through the mill.
I've been here 26 years.
And you're retiring when?
Thursday.
Congratulations. So what's your observation of this industry having worked in it for so long? Has it been a good job?
It's been a good job. Lots of change. We've had some rough times, but overall it's been rewarding. It's supported my family. This is an area I like to live in, and this has been a good living. So,
you're going to stick around this area, or are you going to move somewhere far away?
No, I've lived here all my life, and I plan on staying here. So,
the economies of small towns like Morton depend on those jobs. Morton has already lost half its timber jobs, and people there don't want to lose any more.
Yeah, in some ways, this feels like a very Pacific Northwest story. It involves lumberjacks. But in others, it's a story that's playing out in rural communities across the country. Industrial jobs used to anchor them, and now that anchor is gone in a lot of these towns, and they feel adrift. It's also a story that's really driving the political moment right now.
Yeah, it is. And when we lose mills, it's not just the jobs that go away. It's the whole infrastructure of producing wood products. Without that production capacity, it makes us reliant on non-local sources of all the wood products we need. And we need a lot of them. Seattle is basically a city built out of wood. It's hidden in the walls of our homes and apartment buildings. It's in the paper we use and the particle board in our furniture. Without this industry, we just have to import a lot more things from somewhere else, like Canada.
So really, it's about self-sufficiency. We have this valuable local resource that we could be using and managing ourselves with good local jobs and selling, or we can pay people in other places to import that same resource. And those people might not have the same values that we do in terms of protecting the environment and treating workers well, just to name a few, right?
Yeah. Any of these topics could be a whole episode in and of themselves.
Sure. So up until now, we've made it harder to harvest wood in the U.S. and easier to import it from Canada. This seems like a problem that Trump would have a big appetite to solve, bringing back these blue-collar sawmill jobs. That's right up his alley. So what's his plan?
Well, 3 things. The first thing is tariffs on Canadian lumber. The tariff is about 15% now, and it could double in August. That would raise prices on Canadian lumber and might make domestic lumber more competitive. Second, he wants to open up more federal lands to timber harvest. He wants to harvest 25% more trees. That could mean less habitat for endangered species and more logging in places where people hike and camp. But increasing that supply of wood helps sawmills stay open. And then finally, third, he's also been trying to make it much easier to build logging roads in remote forests, where road building is heavily regulated right now. Roads contribute to erosion and landslides, but they make more logging possible.
So it sounds like there are a lot of pros and cons there. I know that the attempt to build more roads into these wild places has been a big, hotly debated issue in the news lately.
Yeah.
It seems like the strategy behind these moves is to ultimately increase the supply of timber for these mills so that they can turn it into more forest products and hire more workers. And then also to make U.S. lumber a more competitive product for builders here.
Exactly.
Do the people that you spoke to think it'll work?
Maybe. I mean, they say opening up more forest land will definitely help, since supply constraints are one of their biggest problems, which is the reason many sawmills have closed. But forestry experts, like Austin Himes at Washington State University, warn that Trump's plan doesn't address many of the industry's core problems, especially for smaller lumber mill towns like Morton.
This could present an opportunity of kind of throwing a lifeline, particularly for some of those less efficient, smaller mills that are out there. But it's probably not a permanent lifeline.
The first core problem is the way we manage our forests. Mill towns need a steady supply of logs over generations. They don't just need a big surge from a massive clear cut followed by a dry spell. Clear cuts like that used to be the norm, but today what mills say they need is a forest that operates kind of like a farm, one that's sustainably harvested so it can provide a consistent supply. Think a quilt of forest lands where each square contains trees of a different age. Or forests that are thinned more gradually, which could also help prevent wildfires. There's not much in the president's plan to suggest a focus on that kind of long-term planning.
What we're going to see, I suspect, are areas that are hit particularly hard by very intensive harvesting practices that lead more to sort of lose-lose situations for communities who enjoy those forests and the ecological sustainability of those forests, and will only probably have marginal benefits in terms of revitalizing jobs.
The second core problem that the Trump administration doesn't really address is the unpredictability of tariffs. I mean, timber companies plan 40 to 50 years in advance. It takes a long time to grow trees. So a short-lived tariff isn't going to convince lumber companies to build new mills in places like Morton.
Those are going to be hundreds of millions of dollar investments. Huge, huge, huge upfront capital investment that's only going to be recovered over, probably decades, right?
So what would a more effective strategy look like?
Well, people in the lumber industry say what it would really take to bring back jobs and production is a predictable, long-term strategy that allows them to invest in forests that they can harvest for generations. And the last thing that could be more effective would be to help Washington's timber industry modernize.
What does that mean?
Well, anybody can cut 2x4s, but there are more valuable wood products. The feds could help make that kind of thing happen by investing in research. Think engineered wood flooring and huge mass timber beams that aren't created from huge trees, but from smaller trees pressed together. That would mean we could use every part of the tree. And it turns out you can spin tree fibers into super light, super strong material similar to carbon fiber material. Carbon fiber is usually made from fossil fuels, so wood is more sustainable.
Interesting. Remind me what carbon fibers are used for?
Oh, just about everything these days, from bicycles to Boeing airplanes. Or take sawdust. It can be fermented to produce ethanol, which goes into fuel.
Or you can use it to grow mushrooms.
Totally, yeah. So imagine an airport made almost entirely out of wood, some of these highly engineered products, like the brand new Portland airport. I don't know if you've seen pictures, but it's beautiful. And now imagine the airplanes that take off and land there are built from wood-based carbon fibers. And imagine they're flying with fuel derived partly from sawdust.
It sounds like something out of the Jetsons.
Yeah, like imagine the Jetsons, but where everything's made out of wood.
Yeah, it's prettier.
And workers of the future are not just going to be using saws to make those products. They're going to be using AI. We already saw some of that happening up in Morton. At the Hampton Mill, they're starting to use visual AI systems to do things like grade the quality of lumber. The AI system counts the knots on each board. The more knots, the lower the grade. That's a job that used to be done by a mill worker. So the mill workers of the future will be quite different from the ones in the past. They'll need to understand how to manage these systems.
That's amazing. So even something as old school as working in a sawmill is not immune to the effects of the AI revolution.
Yeah, what industry is immune?
All right, well, thanks for taking us there. This is really interesting. Next up, the end game.
Support comes from the Gates Foundation Discovery Center, featuring new interactive exhibitions spotlighting innovations with global impact. Open Wednesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., with guided tours at 2 p.m. All are welcome. More at discovergates.org.
I'm Janely Espinal, host of Financially Inclined, a new podcast from Marketplace. Each week, I'll help you understand the basics of personal finance so you can make the most of your life.
So a budget, I like to say it's an ugly word for a beautiful thing.
Do you have enough money to buy new or used? Which will definitely tell you what kind of car you should buy.
You are literally going to learn the language of investing.
When should I use a debit card and when should I use a credit card?
Listen to Financially Inclined wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, we're back with the Endgame, and today our producer, Alec Cowan, is going to host it.
Hi, Alec.
Hello, everybody. So, Joshua, I wanted to revisit this really cool idea that you touched on, and that's this idea of mass timber, using these kind of specially engineered wood beams to build skyscrapers and other superstructures. So I went down this very nerdy rabbit hole of the world's most cutting-edge wooden structures, and I guess I'm curious to see how much you know about them.
Okay.
Okay, so to start off, what's the largest wooden building in Washington State?
Well, not the Tacoma Dome. I mean, it's got a lot more than wood, but those timbers are some of the, I think, the largest free-spanning timbers in like the state or something.
Okay, Monica?
Does it have to be all like 100% made of timber?
No,
okay.
It doesn't.
I ask that as if I like have something in mind, but I have nothing.
It is the Tacoma Dome.
Oh,
I wanted to give you a chance. Yeah, it is the largest wooden building in the state is the Tacoma Dome, 1.6 million board feet. It was the largest wooden dome arena in the world at the time of its opening. It is still the largest indoor event venue in the state, even bigger than the revamped Climate Pledge Arena by a few thousand seats.
And we should just say for people, this is like a big, like you could hold professional sports in there. They have monster truck rallies in there.
Have you guys ever seen a show or an event at the Tacoma Dome?
Definitely.
I covered a Bernie Sanders rally there once.
Okay. What have you seen, Joshua?
Monster trucks.
Monster trucks. Okay, so that's the largest wood building in Washington, but a lot of innovation in mass timber has come not from trying to make buildings bigger necessarily, but taller. That's where the struggle comes in. Where do you think the tallest mass timber building is here in the Pacific Northwest? We'll start broad.
Portland?
I think it's in Seattle.
So?
Or maybe is Vancouver included? I think it's in Vancouver, BC.
Oh.
Okay, it is in Vancouver, BC. I know we're getting technical here. What is the Pacific Northwest? It's called the Brock Commons Tallwood House. It's a student dorm building over in Vancouver. It's also called the Ply Scraper, which I really love, like skyscraper, but like plywood, the Ply Scraper. It's a really fun play on words. It's 18 stories. Was at one time the tallest mass timber building in the world. So let's say we leave out Canada. They don't count in the Pacific Northwest. Where do you think the tallest is here in the U.S. Pacific Northwest?
Well, I would have said Portland.
Portland?
Portland's short. I think it's Seattle.
Okay, it is Seattle. I know there aren't a huge number of options here.
Let me guess which building it is.
Okay, there we go.
Is it the owned by Dunn Lumber building on the north side of the Ship Canal in Seattle? What do you think, Monica?
All I can think of is the Columbia Tower, but I don't think it's made of wood.
I haven't gone and knocked on the side of it just to see.
I'm sure there's wood in the building.
I'm sure there is. Okay, so it's actually a residential apartment building in Capitol Hill called Heartwood.
Okay.
And this is interesting. It's an 8-story residential building. It's on the kind of by Madison and Union intersection. Their website has some really interesting cross sections of the building, all made from timber. It's inspired by this traditional Japanese system of joinery that really minimizes the need for steel and other kind of connectors to keep the logs together.
Ooh, I like that, like Lincoln logs.
Exactly. And it was the first building in the U.S. to be completed under this kind of set of fancy schmancy international codes that set up the kind of blueprint for making these big, tall high-rises. It was the first done in the U.S. under that. Portland also has a building about 8 stories. They're actually pretty close in height. It's a pretty close race. Also made of mass timber there in Portland.
I love this timber tour. Well, thanks for bringing us that game, Alec.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's it for Booming. Thanks so much for listening.
If you have a question about the economy that you want us to answer, email us at booming@kuow.org.
And special thanks to those of you who are donating to the show. We couldn't do it without you. So if you want to donate, go to kuow.org/booming. And thanks.
Our producers are Lucy Suchek and Alec Cowan. Our editor is Carol Smith. I'm Monica Nicholsberg.
I'm Joshua McNichols.
And we'll see you next time.
People usually get to choose their lawyers. Local governments, they get their lawyers elected.
On the latest Sound Politics, it's Law & Order, Local Government Edition. We'll break down the race for Seattle City Attorney and whether voters could re-elect a Republican in this blue city.
Plus, a lot of other weird local legal news. I promise it's more fun than it sounds.
Move over, Benson and Stabler. It's Greenstone and Denkman.
On Sound Politics, wherever you get your podcasts.